It's the anniversary of the Titanic. So let's work out how to create an incredible Titanic poster using Adobe Express. So for this one, I'm going to start from scratch by pressing the big plus in the top left. I'm going to go to custom size graphic and I'm going to go for print and A4, just in case you want to print it off yourselves. Next, and here we go, we're in our canvas here, ready to go. So first things first, I'm going to call it Titanic poster. There we go. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a background color. So I'm just going to click on the canvas and I'm going to choose a color. Now I'm looking for a kind of vintage style, so I might go for something like that. Now the reason why I'm choosing this kind of thing is because I've searched in Google Images for White Star Line Titanic poster. White Star Line were the manufacturers or the people who made the boat. And I've just kind of gone through and I've seen different images on here to get some inspiration. Now I want to keep it nice and simple. Now for my image, kind of my main image in this poster, I've used Google Images and I found this cracking picture of the Titanic. And you can use pictures like this if it's for educational use. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save the image by right clicking. I'm going to make sure it's in my downloads and then I'm going to click save. Now another way that you can do this is actually by right clicking, copy image, and then you can paste it directly in. And there you go. Another way to do that would be to go to photos and upload photo, and then you can get your image and select it from there. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to start modifying it by putting it into the kind of size that I want. Now this is stretching out over the edges, but which is fine, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the crop and shape tool. So I'm going to crop it here and then drag in the edges like that, and the same on the left hand side, roughly making sure that it's about the same. And then when I'm happy, I'm going to press the tick here. Now I can move it about and make sure it's in the center, because what I want to do is I want to have some text above and text below. But before I do that, what I think I'm going to do here is put a shape over the, well, I'm going to put it over the top and then put it to the background. So let me select shapes. And I'm just going to go for a square. Okay, now that square will go in a random color. I'm going to make sure that mine is a white color by dragging the color circle there right all the way up into the top left, and so it gives me all the Fs. And I'm going to drag it into position until it's just overlapping all of this image here. Okay, there we go. Now, obviously, it's kind of in the way. We don't want it to be like that. So I'm going to open up my layer stack and put my Titanic picture at the top of that stack. Next up, I'm going to put some text at the top. I'm just going to press add your text, and here I'm going to change it to the Titanic. Okay, now that I've got that, I'm going to stretch it out into one line, and then I can drag it so that the size is roughly what I want it to be. What I can do then is start looking for different types of fonts, because I think that one's a little bit boring. So what I'm going to do is look for font recommendations. I can explore more here. That one's quite cool actually. And then it means I can stretch it out again. And I'm going to make sure it's centered before I start doing other things to it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start playing with it by doing things like changing the color. So I'm going to change it to white. Now obviously it's harder to read like that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little outline on it as well. And I think I'm going to keep it kind of very traditional and red. Okay, so if I start moving this circle, yeah, like a deep red, that looks good to me. Make it a bit darker. There we go. That feels a little bit more antique and vintage. And then I'm going to start putting things on, like if I go through these different images, you can see it's got things like the flag on there, little banners. Now I really like these banners where you've got the text in there as well, things like White Star Line. So let me go over here and I'm going to search for things like, in my shapes, I'm going to search for things like banner. Now, if you find one in here that you like, you can select it, put it in there and start playing around with it. But actually, if you go into something like design assets and search for banner as well, you get more options. So I'm specifically looking for something that goes onto 2 lines. I think that one's very cool. I'm going to start playing with the size of it and put it into the right position. So I'll drag it down, start moving it around, and then I'm going to change the color of it. Now to do that, I'm going to have to use filters on here. So here you can see in the duotone, you can change the color that is being used for this banner. And I'm going to change it to that red there, which I really like. Now that that's in there, I'm going to start putting some text in there as well. So things that I can see on my posters from Google Images, things like White Star Line, that's a good one. Southampton to New York, I really like that as well. So let me start putting some text in here. Again, it's using that same type of font that I use for my title, which maybe I think I'll change, but let me just start playing around with it, moving it into position. It's also giving it a little outline as well, because I had an outline on my title. So let me turn that off. That's automatically much more readable. And then I can play with things like how it sits in terms of rotating it and then putting it into position. If you want to change the font, you can change it up here if you want. I've got the Hot Salsa Regular in there. I think I'll keep it in. And then what I can do here is I can duplicate that and then move it over to this section of the banner, play around with the rotation again, and then change it by putting things like Southampton, New York in there. Now, obviously it goes on to 2 lines, so I'm gonna have to start playing with the size of it and then just ease it into position. Click off, take a look. Now I think with the background color, maybe I want to change that ever so slightly. So I think I'm gonna drag it down, make it a little bit more muted. There we go. Now down the bottom, I'm gonna put something else in there in text as well. So here down the bottom, again, I'm gonna add some text. The largest liner in the world. And then it's time to play with things like the size. And you can do things like changing the letter spacing, for example. And again, you can use your arrows to do that. And then also, I think I'll put an outline on it again and make sure it's that red that we chose before. So largely, we're kind of done with this. And so what you might want to do at the end is do things like put some texture on there. If you want to make this look like an old poster that you might have uncovered in a box somewhere, then I'm looking to put some texture on top of mine. So there's different ways you can do it. Might try this one. It'll put it in and it's quite small at the moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stretch this out. Now, obviously that is really, really strong. But once it's in there, you can play with things like opacity. I can bring that right down and it gives it that kind of grainy look, which I really, really like. Last but not least, I'm going to put a shape in there. One of the things is the logo for the White Star Line. Change that color to white, obviously, if it being the White Star Line. And then I can play around with the size of it. I can rotate it slightly and maybe I'll put it over here. Once you're happy with your poster, you can download it. You can download it as a PNG, which is good for graphics. So if you're definitely going to print it out, PDF is very good too. But let me just click Start Download. It'll download to my computer in the bottom left here. And then last but not least, you can press Share, Publish, share it via Google Classroom, Microsoft Teams, or click Link. And in a matter of seconds, you've got a link which you can share with your teacher, students, or anyone you like. And there you go. That's how you create a vintage looking poster using Adobe Express for the anniversary of the Titanic. And I'm looking forward to seeing yours.